You're listening to the Achievement Mastery Podcast, the show where ambition meets action and high performers come to break through limits, scale big dreams, and master their success. Hosted by performance coach and achievement strategist Rok Čož, a trusted guide to driven entrepreneurs and growth-minded leaders across Europe and beyond. Each episode delivers powerful conversations with world-class experts, visionary entrepreneurs, and unstoppable changemakers, designed to fuel your mindset, your momentum, and your mission. If you're ready to rise above the noise and unlock your next level, you're in the right place. This is the Achievement Mastery Podcast.
Welcome to the Achievement Mastery Podcast. Today's guest is Rok Čož, a mental performance coach and the author of 2 best-selling books on personal transformation. He helps high performers spot the subtle ways the ego keeps them stuck and teaches practical tools rooted in truth, vulnerability, and mind-body awareness. He works with entrepreneurs, professional poker players, and top competitive gamers. His first book is now available in English on Amazon. Rok, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Hello.
So first of all, tell me about yourself.
I'm a simple guy. My primary goal in life is to live happy, adventurous life that's interesting and that's full of fulfilling relationships and things that I like doing. 6 years ago, I made a big transformation in my life. Before, I was chasing an idea of success that I got from the media, from my family, from outside. Of course, like many of people who do that, I got to the point where I burned out because I wasn't in touch with myself. So I had to transform. I had to change. That's where I got into trying to understand how do humans function, how could I live a better, healthier life, and to be content with the way I live. That's when I wrote my first book after this transformation. I actually thought this is Naslednji korak, and I now called it The Next Step, which is now available on Amazon. And the book speaks about what is holding us back. Because during that transformation, I worked a lot with psychedelics. I mean, I read lots of books and I tried to figure what's holding me back. I came to a point where I realized that the only thing really holding me back is my own ego. Every day since, I've been working on improving in this area, and I found my passion in it. So for the past 6 years, I've helped other people make the same transformation. I help them raise their self-awareness and to see that the real success comes from the heart and not from chasing some other people's standards.
I love that. In our previous conversation, you said the truth can set us free in a very practical, everyday way. What does that look like for someone with a busy, high-pressure day?
Why should we be honest? Why should we be truthful? This is where we get it wrong mostly, because we're not taught how truth actually works, right? We're taught that you should be truthful, you should do that, right? You should be honest, but nobody really tells us why, how it pays for us to be honest. We do something we must in front of others, but as soon as they turn away, we cheat, right? We bend the truth. We try to get away with it. It's not just dishonesty with other people, it's dishonesty with ourselves, because we can't be honest with ourselves and dishonest with others. It doesn't work that way. So either we're honest with ourselves and with others, or we're dishonest with both. If we have a lie as a tool in our toolbox, we're going to use it every time it becomes uncomfortable. For somebody who works in a high pressure environment, there's a lot of situations when it's more comfortable to lie than to be honest. Every inconvenience that comes along the way appears as another drop that they can't currently handle. So lying can seem very practical at that point, but what happens afterwards is we separate ourselves from our outer image. This influences first of all, our confidence, because if you know deep down that you're fake, you can't really bring that confidence and sovereignty as if you know that you're the real deal, right? So this is one of the side effects of lying. The other one is you're making excuses every day all day long. I'm just gonna do this and then I'm gonna rest, or I'm just gonna smoke one more cigarette, one more drink. I'm just gonna tell this lie. We convince ourselves that we're gonna change, but we never actually do. This impacts our health. When I went through that change, my primary concern was my health. I didn't have the tools to process stress in a healthy way. I wasn't honest with myself. If lying is an option, if excuse is an option, you're always gonna pick that over the hard path that will align you with your truth. At some point, if you want to be like really free of that burden that you put on your shoulders with constant lying, you have to embrace the truth. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it pays and it aligns you with your vision and with your goals and with your authentic version of yourself.
Yeah, probably you seen this picture, that circulates in social media where people line in a long queue, and there is the door with the sign above says comfortable lies, and the next door, is there with the uncomfortable truth, and just only
Yeah.
one or two people standing there. So yes, most people seek for something comfortable, something convenient, even if it's a lie, even if they lie to themselves. So yeah, I can absolutely relate to what you say. Tell me this, where do you see the ego most often getting in the way for high performance?
How ego is presented to us is that ego means arrogance. Ego means some fake confidence, right? It is those two things, but it's many, many other things as well, right? So it's our idea of who we are, it's our defense mechanisms, it's our excuses, it's our overthinking, it's our anxiety. So it's this complex defense mechanism whose main goal is to protect itself. Where it shows in high performance is, for example, I work with professional poker players a lot, and where egos gets in the way, it disconnects them with reasonable thinking. For example, you're down 50,000 euros in one game, your ego kicks in, and suddenly you're not making the decisions based on logic or statistics, but you're making decisions on stubbornness. You're counting on luck. Suddenly, you're not making rational decisions, right? Because you're not in touch with yourself. You stop trusting yourself, and you just want to get your shot at luck, right? So, for example, if your opponent had 3 lucky hands where you had better chances of winning, and this really hurts you, you kind of see it as unfair, right? You don't see it as an objective. You start moving towards the hands faster because you want to get your own piece of luck. What happens then is, of course, you make even worse decisions, and from minus 50K, you go to minus 100K really quickly, right? You make more risky decisions. You're not seeing the big picture. You're just making emotional decisions from that spot, right? And this is where most damage happens. I also work with gamers, and what happens then is they stop working as a team. They become more selfish, or some of them stop making risky moves. They freeze. What helps us increase our own performance is really getting to know what our ego faces when we're under stress. And when we realize that, we can then become aware of in what situations we're in that state of mind that isn't optimal for us to perform, and how can we get back to the state of mind that is optimal for us to perform.
So it's true that the first step of success is to drop your ego.
I personally don't believe that it's possible to drop the ego, right? But what it is possible is to get familiar with it, to understand it, and to work with it in a way that it's not impacting your performance, that it's not impacting your relationships. Because ego is a part of life, right? Without it's the spice of life, right? It makes things important to us. It makes us fall in love. It makes us competitive. You can drop the ego for a minute, but sooner or later it comes back. When it comes back, the most important thing is that you have your hands on the wheel. This is what I'm trying to help people actually achieve. This is the voice that doesn't really quiet down ever, right? It's always there, and there's nothing wrong with it if you know how to handle it, right? Because without ego, we would just have no ambition, we have no goals, we have nothing. And that's a really nice state of being when you're in a deep meditation state or when you recharge. But then it's fun to watch your favorite basketball team win, right? And cheer. It's fun to go and have some fun with your friends, right? This is all deeply rooted and connected with our ego. So it's not that much of about dropping the ego, but it's about understanding how it works and start working with it so it doesn't stand in your way.
Thank you for clarifying this. But another thing you mentioned is vulnerability. So if someone wants a safe first step into vulnerability, what could they try this week, for example?
What they can try is being vulnerable with somebody who they trust and that they themselves can allow them to be vulnerable as well. Vulnerability is like a bridge between two people, right? When I'm vulnerable with you, I expose some part of me that I kept hidden until now, but I decided to expose it to you. If I expose this part of me to some complete stranger or somebody who is not been really kind to me in the past, not because they're evil or anything, they might use this opportunity to boost their ego a bit and push us down, and this can hurt us even more, right? So when we're beginning to be vulnerable, when we're beginning to be honest about our struggles, our traumas, our pain, it's really cool to do it with the person who you trust and who you feel like you can won't abuse the information you've given them, or with your therapist, right, who is like professionally trained how to respond when the person on the other end opens up. So this would be like the first step. But what I would also like to add here, why is being vulnerable so important? Because this is the only way we can actually change, right? There is no vulnerability without fear. There is no vulnerability without shame. When we try to change without vulnerability, it means we're just trying to do the same thing over and over again, which we already did in the past. Our belief system is like our foundation, right? On top of which we build on. And being vulnerable is exposing our bottom part of foundation. Look, I have a rotten foundation here. I want to change it. I don't know how, but I want to speak about it and see how I can improve this. So when we change this, when we pull the rotten pieces out, we can then replace it with a healthy one and build on top of it. But if we don't put the rotten pieces out, if we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable, expose something that's been a part of our identity for a longer period of time, we're just building more on a rotten foundation. We want to change without being uncomfortable, without risking, without risk, right? But vulnerability is uncomfortable and it's risky because we never know what's going to happen on the other end.
I see, and I really like that. So you coach people who compete for a living, poker players and FPS gamers, you said. So in those words, what mental patterns cost people the most over time? Whether we are talking about actual results or their ranking, and how do you help them interrupt those patterns, for example, in the middle of a game?
I think what the biggest change that we actually do is we get really aware about the state of mind we're in, right? There are no, I didn't have a game today. It wasn't my day, right? This is not an answer anymore when we work together, right? It wasn't my day. I didn't feel like it. We explore why you didn't feel like it. How was your sleep? How is your nutrition, right? How did you feel? What did you think about when you were in that state, right? What brought you to that? What were the 5 steps before you got into that state where you just didn't feel like it? What I try to help them with is to create a really steady pace so they can be consistent. Because the biggest issue with professionals in FPS games and poker is consistency, right? They can have a couple of good days, but then the bad day come and they destroy the progress they've made so far. And what we're trying to do is raise the awareness of how to be more consistent. So they're making small steps forward without making steps back. And we start with the basics. We start with sleep schedule. We start with nutrition. We start with preparation before a game. We start with the mindset they go into game with. If they have an issue of getting into this competitive mindset, we have 10 commandments that they go through it, right? For a poker player or for an FPS player, they need to let it go and focus on the point at hand. How it's important to always keep your level of communication high and not to pull yourself in. So they kind of remind themselves in front of the game, how can they get into the mindset and why do they make repetitive mistakes? If you make a mistake once, it's not an issue at all, right? You made a mistake, you correct it, and it doesn't happen again, which means that it's not really a pattern of yours. So what we focus is repetitive patterns that are hurting their performance. We together explore the ways of removing those patterns. For example, if I work with a team of 5 players, we explore the patterns in their communication. We establish communication protocols. We establish relationships. We go deep into understanding what being a leader means. If a leader leaves space for others to lead too much, others will step in, and this might shake the dynamic of their agreement that they have as how they work as a team. So we really go into details of repetitive mistakes, and we make a trouble board where they list the repetitive mistakes, and then we have the mistake on the trouble board until we eradicate it, and other mistakes come up. So it's a never-ending process because we always find something new to work on.
Sounds very interesting. But before we continue, if this conversation is useful, follow the show and hit the subscribe button. It helps more people find these conversations and these tools, and it supports this podcast. And let's get back to you now, Rock. So it sounds very interesting because I think in most people's minds, poker players or poker games are like, cigars and whiskeys, girls and having fun. But what you tell us is more of like a preparation of an athlete. You spoke about sleep schedule, nutrition, preparation, 10 commandments. So it sounds like these players are more like athletes.
This is a very competitive sport with very high win-loss reward, right? So if you don't take it seriously, you get eaten alive really quickly. You can lose a lot. It's really important to be well prepared, because if you're not, what happens is you're not a poker player for a long time, right? You're a person in debt. So the people I work with, they are professionals. They are treating it like professional athletes, because if they wouldn't treat it this way, they would fell out of the game much sooner. If you're not leveling up your game constantly, you're left behind, and if you're left behind, this is something that's your disease and not your profession, right? So what we do is we take everything very seriously. We go into details. We explore our egos. We explore our vulnerabilities. We explore our mistakes, and we learn from them. And we make analysis of how we feel, when we feel, and how to, and we find ways to change our emotional states. We find practices that work for each individual person, because we're different in a lot of ways. Even if you're an athlete, in some sense, you have to practice, right? Even if you see a video of, for example, Nikola Jokic playing with horses and drinking with friends, this is a small speck of his life, right? He's actually doing a lot of conditioning. He's doing a lot of practice. He's working really hard to be at the level he is. And this is what happens with everybody who is achieving something on a high level. With poker players is the same. It's either you treat it like a professional athlete or you drop out of the game.
Thank you for sharing this with us. So you wrote 2 books, and one of them is available in English already. So what's
Yeah.
one idea from your book that helped someone bounce back from a setback?
Personal responsibility. If we want to change our life, if we want to have an effect on what happens around us, we need to take responsibility. A lot of content in the books are about stories where it's very easy to blame someone else. The blame, it's a useless emotion. It's really important to immediately switch the blame into personal responsibility. So I'm sorry for what happened. I'm also angry with myself that I allowed for this to happen. But okay, this happened. This is not the state I want to be in. I understand that I'm angry, I understand that I make the mistake. So how do I move forward from this point on? So what change will I make? How I'm gonna take the responsibility for the mistake I did and change it and become a better person from it. I will get to a point where I'm gonna be grateful for the mistake I've made, because it made me a better person. and not better in the eyes of others, but more functional, more happy, more connected with yourself, more satisfied with your life. Like I said, I've written 2 books, and the first one is about transformation and ego, and the second one is about decision making and about growing up. And doesn't mean like growing up till the age of 18, but growing up in terms of being able to stand up for yourself, being able to detach yourself from the role of being a child, right, and become equal to your parents, and to make decisions that come from here and not listen to any other authority than yourself. The book that has been translated to English is the first one, The Next Step, which talks a lot about taking control of your life and stop playing the blame game, because it's not helpful. It's a very childish behavior from the time when you were powerless, when you were a little kid, where you didn't have free will as you have right now, right? You did, but you were punished for practicing your free will. But as adult, it's really important to reclaim that freedom, right? To reclaim that power, and to understand that the blame is not benefiting you in any sense ever, in any situation. It teaches us how to become grateful for our mistakes, because we learned very valuable lessons from it. And for example, if somebody plays you for a fool, if you hold on to the blame, you don't try to understand your own behavior and your patterns that brought you to this point, right? You put the responsibility and the power towards other person. What happens is you can remove this person from your life, but your behavior stays the same. You still attract people like that into your life. You still don't develop tools to protect yourself from such scenarios, right? You play the victim game, and then another person comes to your life, completely not connected to the first one at all, but has similar patterns. This person plays you for a fool again, and again, you focus on them, and everybody is like this, right? For example, what's really popular in the past few years is the word narcissism, right? So, which is basically the equivalent of playing the blame game. When you learn to set boundaries, when you learn to listen to yourself and learn from your mistake, narcissists disappear from your life. Not because they don't exist anymore, but because nobody can play you for a fool like they did before, because you know who you are and what you want, and behavior like that gets shut down really quickly.
Yeah, and that just reminded me to, how we condition children at a very early age to play the blame game. Probably you knew this because it was very popular in my country, or as I grew up. When, for example, a small child hits his or her leg, I don't know, in a table or something, and the parents teach the kid to beat and blame the table. And he said, "Yeah, yeah, beat the table. The table was bad because you hit your leg." And they don't say that. Yeah, you have to mind your steps, or how you approach, this area. But blame the table, and even punish the table, beat the table. And when kids grow up like that, they grow up being conditioned to blame everything and everyone else but themselves. And I think that starts in a very, very early age with behaviors like this. But here comes the rapid fire question section, where I ask you a couple of questions. Are you ready to take the shots?
Of course.
All right. So the first one is, what's one belief you had to unlearn to grow?
Life is playing a game against you. Why does this happen to me, right? But the sooner you substitute this for life is happening for me and in my benefit, for my growth and my happiness, everything changes, because you start seeking clues in what lessons are given through your pain. So this is really important for growth and for personal and for business development.
Thank you so much. The next one is, what's one habit you never skip?
Every morning when I wake up, I have this sequence that I go through: is brush my teeth, wash my face with cold water, meditate for 10 minutes, and then morning workout for 10 to 30 minutes, and then breakfast and cold showers. If I'm on vacation or if I'm at home, if I have a work day, or if there is a weekend, there is no day that I don't want to feel my best. And this morning routine makes me feel my best. We say in Slovenia that if you have a bad day, you woken up and stepped on the left leg when you got up out of the bed. So every day I want to wake up on my right leg. And this is what enables me to do so.
We have the same saying, by the way. And my last rapid fire question is, so what's that one book, apart from your own, of course, that made the biggest impact on you?
The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. I read it at the right exact time when I went through this personal transformation, and it helped me move through some difficult parts.
Rok, thanks for turning big ideas into simple tools people can actually use. For everyone listening, you can find Rok's work at the link below this show in the show notes, and you can follow him on social media, and you can buy his book on Amazon now in English. So if you find this episode helpful, follow the show or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share the episode with someone who's ready to win the inner game. Thank you, Rok, for being
Thank
here.
you, Lance, for a great conversation.
And don't forget, keep striving, keep growing, and see you in the next episode.